All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. And we're so delighted to have District Attorney Todd Spitzer joining us for the call. He's recognized as an expert on security issues, whose reputation as an advocate for victims' rights is respected nationally. Spitzer chaired the groundbreaking campaign for Proposition 9, Marsy's Law, the nation's most comprehensive victims' Bill of Rights, and served as state chair for Proposition 83, the nation's toughest sex offender punishment and control law, as well as Proposition 69, which requires the collection of DNA samples from all felons. Spitzer is a former high school teacher and reserve police officer assigned to DUI enforcement and patrol duties. He is fighting to protect our community. He joint authored Megan's Law on the internet and landmark legislation required to release public information related to sex offenders. And as a former deputy and assistant district attorney, he handled complex matters while managing prosecutors. DA Spitzer has dedicated his life to keeping families safe and is inspired to dedicate his career to public service as an Orange County supervisor, former California State Assembly member, and is now the Orange County District Attorney. So, Mr. Spitzer, would you like to take it away and give us an update on all the things your office is doing?
Oh, goodness gracious. So when I spoke to San Clemente Chamber a couple of weeks ago, they were having all these protests. We had recently had a shooting, unfortunate, terrible shooting of an unarmed African-American. And so my talk to San Clemente, Rhonda was on that call, was completely different than I had planned. This morning, the LA Times, I don't know, is that backwards for you guys?
Perfect.
Yeah, is that it's backwards though, right?
No, it's good.
Okay, well, this is all about today, ballot harvesting.
Oh, God.
Right, and so everybody on this call is obviously very, very interested in what is going on with these ballot boxes throughout the state. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fly through this presentation, but what I want you to keep in mind is just how significant the Orange County District Attorney's Office is in all these discussions. In fact, we're kind of in the middle of all this ballot box issue because if it is deemed eventually as a violation of state law, then it may end up being my responsibility to consider potential prosecutions, which is not where I want to see this go. But right now, the Secretary of State and the Attorney General have indicated that they're taking the lead. But I'll get into it later, but they have the California Republican Party has until 5 o'clock tonight to clear all these ballot boxes across the state, or else they're being threatened with an injunction. I anticipate we're going to have a showdown in court tomorrow because I don't think anybody's backing off. All right, so Baha is going to queue up the Baha Eldon from my office is here, and he's going to queue up the PowerPoint. I don't expect you in introducing this. My goal today is not to have you understand all these issues. It is merely to appreciate how critical the issues are for our county and all the different things we're dealing with in the DA's office. So it's really a presentation for impressions and not as much substance. Who's laughing, Rhonda or Candace?
No, no, Candace is the other Bates person, Todd.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, so we run the largest law firm in Orange County. So we have almost 300 attorneys and almost 900 employees. The budget of the DA's office is, $180 million a year. Next slide, because we're going to go fast. I changed the mission statement of the DA's office. I added victim protection. That was not in the mission statement when I took over. And my goal is to protect the community and protect crime victims. Next. So you can see in terms of our budget, we got hit hard because of the pandemic. We are largely funded like the sheriff through sales tax, and sales tax obviously plummeted during the pandemic. However, sales tax has rebounded pretty significantly. So we're doing better But my credit, and Sergio Prince is on the call, my credit to the DA's to the Board of Supervisors, because they've really protected the DA's office. Next slide. So you'll see, this is just a overview of the different divisions. Obviously, I'm not going to go through each one, but you can see it is a major agency with significant responsibilities. It's really, really huge. Okay, next. Most of you know Sean Nelson, former 4th District County Supervisor, Mayor Fullerton. He's my chief. Most of you know Paul Walters. He was the chief of staff to Lisa Bartlett, former chief of the Santa Ana Police Department. Pat Dixon has a little notoriety because he's a 33-year prosecutor from LA, but he's married to Diane Dixon, the former mayor of Newport Beach, city council member. And then Kimberly Eds is my PIO. She's the former Register investigative reporter. And then she left the Register and went to the city of somewhere inland. It'll come to me. Bob, what city did she go to?
Moreno Valley.
Moreno Valley, thank you. And I stole her away. All right, next slide. We're working on our priorities because they're going to change. But my first 2 years, I'm almost been in office for 2 years, which is crazy making if you think about it. My goal was to restore goodwill, credibility, and get resources for the office. Next slide. I inherited a bunch of messes. I am still under investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. There was a California Attorney General investigation that apparently has been closed, but it all circled around the jailhouse, the use of jailhouse informants. I've changed that policy. We're going to get into it in a minute. Next slide. You all need to appreciate that there are significant issues facing prosecutors across the nation. And all you have to do is look to Los Angeles to see the election between Jackie Lacey, the incumbent, and George Gascon, the former DA of San Francisco, to see what is at stake for prosecutors across this country. Next slide. Many of you are familiar with AB 109. I need to move my box here to the other side. It changed fundamentally where people go after they're sentenced. It significantly changed prisoners who are going to state prison to do their time in our local jails. Our local jails have changed tremendously. The kind of people we're housing in our local jails are really sophisticated criminals. Next slide. Prop 47 has impacted us dramatically. We have a proposition on the ballot this November, Prop 20. I am the Southern California chair. It is to put back many of the crimes that got changed from felonies to misdemeanors back to felonies, especially drug charges. Why? Because when somebody possessed heroin, methamphetamine, serious drugs, we could force them into treatment. If they completed the treatment, we would dismiss the felony. Now, because it's a misdemeanor, most people don't care. So they're not getting drug treatment. Next slide. Prop 57 reclassified many felonies into misdemeanors. So, and it also changed many nonviolent felonies and classified them as nonviolent. That allowed individuals in state prison to get out early. Again, we're trying to change that and reverse that with Prop 20 because it jeopardizes public safety. Next slide. So the death penalty, as you know, the governor said he wouldn't enforce the death penalty. We just took a guilty plea from California's worst mass murderer who killed 4 people in Orange County, the Golden State Killer, very famous now mass murderer. We gave him life without the possibility of parole, not because I don't support the death penalty, I do, but that crime was over 40 years old before we solved it through DNA. And many of the victims and the victims' families are in their late 70s. And if we pursued the death penalty, they never, ever, ever would have been able to get justice. So it was more of a practical solution and disposition, not because I supported the death penalty. Next slide. So Prop 20, I've already talked about, but basically it's changing nonviolent felonies to be violent, like sex trafficking, assault on a police officer, things like that. Reforming parole. Right now, what you need to be able to tell your constituents, if somebody applies for parole, all the parole board can consider is their most recent crime, not their entire criminal history. I mean, think about that for a second, right? When any of us are judged for a job or our performance, they look at our entire record. They just don't look at our most recent incident. They look at our job history, right? So it is ridiculous, but it was intended to free prisoners and reduce prison overcrowding. And then DNA, they stopped us from collecting DNA on some types of crime. DNA is a phenomenal tool and we're trying to restore it. Next slide. I'm going to skip this. I've already explained it. Okay. For a lot of the legislative reps, you have been watching a lot of the bills coming out of Sacramento. Many of them are just killing public safety. One of the ones I want to talk about from years past is the legalization of marijuana. It's not that I'm necessarily opposed to the cannabis clubs and all that, although I think the fact they've all congregated in Santa Ana is really unfair to Santa Ana, although Santa Ana welcomes them because it's a huge revenue generator. Santa Ana generated $10 million in local revenue because of those cannabis clinics and stores. I mean, that's a huge number. What I'm seeing as a DA is individuals using marijuana and then driving cars is out of control. People do not understand how strong the marijuana is that is being cultivated in greenhouses and under strict conditions. In other words, they're getting they're getting all the mileage out of that cannabis plant that it can produce. And it is that type of precision that is causing people to get in their cars, not understand the implications, and they're killing people. I mean, they're mixing marijuana with alcohol and they're killing people. And it's out of control. It's out of control. Next slide.
Todd, I think you might be on mute somehow.
Thank you. These are pretty self-explanatory. These are the initiatives from this year. We're going to be revising them for next year. And let me talk about that for a second. Prosecutors all over this country are under attack. And we're under attack because there's a fundamental belief that we are too close to the police. You may have followed the protest in Yorba Linda, where a woman from Long Beach came to Yorba Linda in an organized protest for Black Lives Matter and largely against police brutality, officer-involved shootings, things like that. She took her car and she drove it through the crowd. She ran over a lot of people. One woman in particular, her tire ran over the woman's head, and she ran over a man and broke his leg in several places, compound fracture. There was a protest last weekend calling on me to let her out of jail and to reduce her bail. I'm not going to talk so much about the particulars of the case because it's pending litigation, but what I want everybody on this call to appreciate is district attorneys are under a microscope like never before. Everything I do is monitored 24/7. And you'll see, like never before, there's a lot of chatter about prosecutors. We know there's a tremendous amount of discussion about police, but the DA race that I mentioned earlier is all about the question: are DAs filing enough criminal charges against the police? And are we prosecuting enough police officers? And that is a national question. And I'll answer it very simply. If a police officer breaks the law, I will file criminal charges against them. If they don't, I will not. And my office will do an investigation that is fair, open, transparent, and complete. Many of you know I was a police officer for 10 years as a reserve for Los Angeles. I know what the police do because I was one of them. It is one of the most difficult jobs that we have, and police officers are required to make split-second, microsecond decisions that often involve life and death. And sometimes they get it wrong, but that doesn't mean it's criminal. And the courts and the law allow for mistakes as long as it was done under certain circumstances. All I'm saying is, I believe Orange County is very supportive of law enforcement, and I think it needs to be. And you can see that there are forces now that want Orange County to change. And what I'm promised to do as DA is to make sure we change respectfully and appropriately, and reforms are implemented that are appropriate, but not that jeopardize our safety as a community. Next slide. Let's go ahead and skip this because I'm not monitoring my time, but I can feel I'm getting close. So some of the reforms: I established an ethics officer. Next slide. I started and have a conviction integrity unit. That means we will go back and look at any conviction. And if there's new evidence, we will open up and we will review whether we got it right the first time. And we are willing to say we got it wrong. Next slide. I have a victim ombudsman now. Any crime victim. So if you get a call to your offices and somebody doesn't think the DA's office is being responsive, you can call me or we will get our victim ombudsman to call them. Next slide. We have a training program that is robust. Next slide. Our Jailhouse Informants, that's the snitch scandal. You can no longer use a jailhouse informant in Orange County without my express approval. I, as the DA, have to sign off. That wasn't the policy before. Next slide. We can skip this too. Okay. So hopefully these are community advisory groups. I've started Hispanic, Vietnamese, Korean advisory groups. If you think, for example, I believe I need a business advisory group. So if you think there's an advisory group that we need to start and have communication with, I'd like your input. Next slide. We can skip this. We can skip this. Skip. Not that you care, but when I started as a DA in 1990, which is crazy, right? I've been doing this for 30 years. I was judged on one thing, how many trials I did. It was, how many trials did you do and what was your conviction rate? That is not an appropriate performance evaluation factor anymore. My evaluation is on the whole prosecutor. What are you doing for our community? What kind of person are you? What do your colleagues think of you? What do you bring to the table in terms of being a prosecutor? What is your judgment? Are you fair? So we look at the entire prosecutor now. Next slide. Next. Keep going. Go, keep going. So a lot of you have read in the paper about evidence booking and how the sheriff's department didn't properly book evidence. My review of that is coming to a close. And I will be issuing some reports soon. So I think the sheriff's department, once they discovered the situation, did a really outstanding job. And I give my hats off to Sheriff Barnes, but they had a serious problem and I think they fixed it. And but it's a very, very important discussion for our county. Next slide. So this is the recidivism reduction unit I started. Next slide. And basically, I want you just to see as a visual and appreciate, not everybody needs to get convicted. Some people need mental health help. Some people need diversion. And we are going to evaluate the individual. We're not just going to try to throw the book at everybody. We're not going to look at our stats. We're going to look at what does this person need to not commit a crime in the future. Next slide. This just gives you an idea of all the courts that we staff that give people opportunities. One of them I will highlight is Veterans Court. I do believe that good men and women go into service for our country, go in normal, and come out screwed up because of what they have to deal with. And I don't think they should be punished for that if I can get them on the right path. Next slide. Keep going. Okay, so I flew through that because I think for this audience, it's more important to just give you a general overview and have you appreciate. In a nutshell, the DA's office is involved in literally every controversy in this county. I mean, significant controversies. And I ran for this office. I knew it was an important job. I mean, for goodness sakes, I work there. But I can just tell you, as having been the head administrator of this agency for 2 years, it is a much bigger job than even I knew or appreciated. And it has incredible impact on our community. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you again for taking the time to do this and to be with us today. I know you touched on it briefly in the beginning of your presentation, but obviously it's safe to say the election is weighing pretty heavily on everybody's mind.
Yep.
Can you address, maybe, you talked about what your office is doing, but how can people make sure that they're casting their ballot in the right boxes? And, do we have any reason to be concerned about election fraud?
Well, there's all these new procedures vis-a-vis ballot harvesting. When you allow somebody to take control of your ballot, you're inviting mischief. I mean, first of all, I don't know why anybody would hand over their ballot to somebody else, unless they were in a nursing home or they couldn't, deliver the ballot themselves. But I mean, most people do not want to give up custody of their ballot. So what I've said is this, and I hope my Republican and Democrat friends on this call will appreciate this. Our job as district attorney and the district attorney's office, our job is to look into allegations, investigate those allegations, and make sure that people were playing by the rules. And if they're not, to do something about that, and to use our good judgment. So I can tell you that I have a whole team that's deployed in this regard. And we're on call. I mean, we're going out on when there were allegations that there were these boxes that were not official. That was on a Sunday. I had investigators out there interviewing people on Sunday, last Sunday. So we are an immediate responsive strike team. When the registrar of voters, Neil Kelly, asks us to deploy. So we don't do it on our own. We wait for let me rephrase that. We wait for Neil Kelly to call us, and then we have a hotline. And it's on my website, OCDA. So if any of your constituents call you and say, look, I, fill in the blank, I believe somebody's engaging in voter fraud, you need to have them call our hotline and file a report.
And then you mentioned that you've been in this role for 2 years, which obviously it's been a very mellow and calm 2 years. So I'm just kidding. Do you do anything like this? Like, do you host monthly Zoom meetings to kind of update the community, or what would be the best way? Obviously you're very busy, but what's the best way for local constituents to get in contact with your office or with you, or to hear about the efforts your office is making?
So obviously my ability, like all the elected officials in this county, has been limited because we haven't been able to make personal appearances. So I am doing as many kind of outreach Zoom calls as possible. And we're going to do a lot more in 2020. I have to confess, my first 2 years in office, it's been overwhelming. I mean, I have a lot of friends on this call, and they know how hard I work. And they know that for me to feel that something's overwhelming is got to be pretty significant, because they know that, for a lot of years, I've been able to handle a lot of situations, and I have phenomenal staff, and I think we're doing an outstanding job. But I wanted you in the PowerPoint to appreciate just how many issues we are dealing with. And we will continue to do an outstanding job as long as we have the financial support from the Board of Supervisors to continue to do it. Look, let's talk about police for a minute. Do you really think a person today graduating from college or high school is saying, I want to become a cop? The applications for police are way down, and the criteria for screening is going to be compromised. We're not going to get the best of the best because the best of the best no longer wants to be police. There's a danger that the best of the best don't want to be prosecutors anymore, because the scrutiny and the criticism is extremely high right now. And my job as DA is to take the take the arrows and take the bullets, because I'm the elected. But I can just tell you from my office, the criticism isn't appreciated. And if people are it affects morale. It really, really does.
Makes sense. Well, DA Spitzer, I could ask you like a million more questions, but just in the interest of time, to get our other elected official representatives to give us updates, we're going to go ahead and move on. Is there any other closing words or anything you want to leave us with?
No, the only thing I'll say to everybody is, look, I have a public affairs unit. If you have any issues whatsoever, I want you to reach out to me and my office. I want you to go back for the ledge reps, and I want you to tell your bosses and to the chamber, I want you to make sure your board of directors knows we are fully accessible. We want to support your efforts. If you have opportunities or issues, we want to know about it, and we want to make sure the lines of communication are outstanding. Again, why? Because I care deeply about public safety and protecting this county. And I will tell you, I am literally worried sick that our county, if we're not careful, could slip into the abyss and become a San Francisco or Los Angeles. We can't let that happen. And Sinclair Lewis wrote a book called It Can't Happen Here. And it was about socialism. And the argument was socialism cannot occur in the United States. And what I'm telling you is anything could happen if you're not diligent and careful. So that's my major message. I'm here to protect public safety and quality of life for our community. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, I know you're extremely busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time.
All right, you take care, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right, so we'll get going, move right along. So up next, we have an update from Congressman Mike Levin's office, Ms. Terry Van Horn.
Well, good morning, everybody. And this is the second time that I have had to follow the DA. He is not an easy act to follow. I'll do my best. Happy Thursday. This past Tuesday evening, the Congressman was honored to host our U.S. Military Service Academy night, which of course was done in virtual fashion. Each year, he has the privilege of nominating extraordinary young people to 4 of the 5 academies. He encouraged all participants with the desire to attend to submit their packages and apply for a nomination. So if you know anyone else who is out there interested in applying, who may not have been on the call, the deadline to submit applications is October 31st, and interviews will be conducted December 11th through 13th. And for additional information, the person to contact is our own Gabriela Ochoa, Gabby. She handles the Veterans Affairs office, Veterans Affairs in our district office. So I will provide her contact information in the chat box when I'm finished here. And then one quick piece of legislation, the Congressman, along with Rep. Susan Davis, introduced the Military Dependent School Meal Eligibility Act, which is HR 8534. It will automatically enroll children of eligible service members into school meals programs. As the Congressman stated, and I quote, "The men and women who risk their lives for our country should never struggle to feed their children. It's unacceptable that 1 in 7 military families face food insecurity," end quote. So this bill will authorize the Department of Defense to alert the state agencies overseeing school meal programs to directly certify the children of eligible active duty service members. And then our constituent of the month is Oscar Ortega. He is the founder and executive director of Lived Experience. He was born and raised in Oceanside. And he happens to know firsthand what a difference community support can make in the lives of our youth. He himself was headed down not a great path, a destructive path, as he describes it, of drug addiction, poverty, homelessness, and facing incarceration. He launched Lived Experiences in 2018 to provide critical support and resources for underserved kids and teenagers in our district. So as noted by the Congressman, Oscar also stepped up to support local youth during the COVID pandemic and continues to do so, especially those that are suffering from food insecurity, domestic abuse, which I know has been highlighted a lot in the news lately, and financial hardships, of course. So he saw this strain heightened among his own staff. And so they set up food drives, school supply donations. They started doing haircuts and much more, just help alleviate the challenges of, during these times. And with the support of the community, the Lived Experiences team has so far distributed a total of 270,413 pounds of food to working families in Oceanside. So thank you, Oscar, for all you do. And congrats on Constituent of the Month. And I will close with, in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly known as Columbus Day, I'd like to highlight, and let me make sure I get this pronunciation correct. It's the Ahashiman, I believe. They were also referred to as the Juaneños, who were natives to our district. They inhabited the San Onofre to South Orange County area. They began to be associated with Mission San Juan shortly after it was founded in 1776. And there is a Juaneño nation of San Juan Capistrano that represents the interests of the Ahashiman people today. And with that, I will turn it back over to Vicki. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We appreciate you. Any update on the removal of spent fuel at San Onofre?
Oh gosh, my apologies. I should have been better prepared. Yes, I will. Let me follow up with you on that. I will follow up with you on that. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Thank you for the update. All right. Up next, we have Senator Pat Bates' office. We have Miss Rhonda Reardon. Do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, Vicki, Candace is going to be doing the report today. I'm
Just
sorry.
kidding. I was testing you. I just wanted to say hi. Candace, would you like to give us the report?
I'll always be willing to say hi to you, Vicki.
Hi.
You.
She's always here to bail me out. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Good. Okay. I'm on my cell phone rather than my computer today. Anyway, hello everyone from Senator Bates's office. Things are still trickling down from the close of session, the end of last month, and lots of bills have been signed. Senator Bates had two bills that she co-sponsored that were signed by the governor, and one was SB 406, was where the Department of Health is taking action against unlicensed facilities if they've gotten substantiated complaints. So in other words, if the community has called the police and it's been substantiated, they can take action against these facilities, which has been a concern for many residents in South Orange County. In addition, she co-sponsored AB 323, which keeps local newspapers afloat with independent contractor workers at least for the next year. This has an effect on AB 5, where there are over 100 exemptions offered on this horrible bill to this point. She also authored SB 934, which is basically focused at nonprofits to help them save money, reduce paperwork, as also save money for efficient uses in the state employment people. So we have lots of grants, or several anyway, that have come into Orange County for COVID aid to local governments, improving public safety, housing for homeless, military housing for at-risk use, assistance for low-income homeowners, and planning grants for cities. For more information on this, please don't hesitate to go to the senator's website. And also libraries are now keeping a database of all grants. And so it's at www.grants.california.gov, which will make it easier for nonprofits and other organizations to apply for grants. Our big deal in the last couple of weeks is the governor's executive order of preserving 30% of the lands and waters by 2030. I believe, that's my personal opinion, but it appears that the governor decided to go ahead with this. There was a bill in the Assembly, AB 3030, that they were working on that covered a lot of this, but it was determined that there was too much ambiguity to it. There's lack of funding, and there was a regulatory overreach. So Senator Bates is not in favor of this executive order because it feels as though they're bypassing the legislative process. In addition to this, he had another executive order that was to reduce the sale or eliminate the sale of all gasoline powered cars by 2035. And this is for all new cars and passenger trucks. So she's also been an advocate for opposition to Proposition 19 since she was involved in writing the analysis of this bill. So that's where we stand. Also want to mention something about CAL FIRES. Be sure you go to the senator's website for more information on that. Our fire season is often greater here in South Orange County during the October timeframe than it is at any other time of year. So we're not out of the woods yet. So the senator recommends that you all take heed. So that's it for this time. Rhonda, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not. Great job, Candace.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Candace. All right, and now we've got Dave Everett from Assemblyman Bill Bro's office.
All right, thank you. Just a couple items to update you guys on as we're kind of winding down over here in Assemblyman Bro's office. The budget that the state passed back in end of June, beginning of July, the whole thing counted on the federal budget giving $14 billion in some kind of relief funding to the state. And as negotiations have gone forward here, I think it's become clear that that's not going to happen. Or very, very unlikely it's going to happen in this round of the CARES Act funding. And so there were some triggers that had to go that happened in October where the state has to basically account for that 14 billion. So some of the cuts they had to a lot of social service programs, to education, to our universities, and to our Cal State system, those are all going to go into effect. And then a lot of the money that they shifted to next year, they're going to have a bigger hole there and a tougher time filling that. So that's not great news, but I think a lot of us saw that coming and felt like it was not responsible during the state budget time, and probably brings up a legal question, even if they can, count the budget balanced when they pretend somebody else is going to give them money and it doesn't happen. But that's the bad state budget's gotten a little bit worse, or a lot bit worse. Another thing that we're trying to keep an eye on, and I know the Republican caucus in the Senate and the Assembly is looking at this, is that there's just been a lot of spending from the governor that is not approved by the legislature, and that's where spending is supposed to start. And there was a legislative analyst report that just came out saying that we're approaching $200 million spent on homelessness, and there's been no legislative authority for that. So it's setting a very concerning precedent, and that the state constitution entrusts the legislative branch with that power, but our executive branch seems to be wielding it all by themselves. And the other issue we're kind of keeping an eye on is the fact that Gavin Newsom won't allow the reopening of a lot of these counties unless there's all these other political components to what's going on, social justice, or one of the things we're hearing in Sacramento is that the schools can't open in the state until at least 2021, so nobody gets a head start in any of the other areas. I think the position of the Republican caucus is that they want to see schools open where they can immediately, so that at least the fewest amount of kids are affected by this as possible. And then last but not least, the thing that we're spending, all of our remaining time on here is the EDD cases and folks trying to get their checks from the Employment Development Department. And if you're hoping to get your check by Christmas, there's bad news. The agency says it won't clear its backlog of claims until January. And so when we kind of needed them most, and they've kind of dropped the ball the last few years, now they've kind of turtled up and saying they're not going to get to any of these backlog claims until at least next year. So I wish I could end on a more upbeat note, but a lot of bad stuff going on at the state, and a lot of unaccountable stuff going on at the state that we're just trying to get our arms around. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take those, but otherwise that's all I got.
Thanks for ending it on the uplifting note there, Dave. That's nice. All right, looking for some good news. Moving on to OC Supervisor Lisa Bartlett's office, Sergio Prince.
Thank you, Vicki. And it's good seeing Todd today. Under a lot of pressure these days. Candace touched upon it, and I'd like to piggyback on it as well regarding the emergency preparedness issues that we're dealing with right now. Candace mentioned that we're entering the most intense fire time in Orange County in the next 30 days. In the next 30 days, the worst, most destructive fires in Orange County history have taken place, including the Santiago fire back in 2007, the freeway complex fire that took place a year after that, and then back in the 90s, the Laguna Beach fires all took place in the next 30 days. So we've really dodged a bullet this year in terms of wildfires in Orange County because this year in California, it has been the most destructive fire season in California history. And lots of our fire personnel have gone to other parts of the state in mutual aid efforts. Hopefully we won't need that mutual aid here, but we really need to get prepared. So on that note, Supervisor Bartlett, when I was with her, we started the South County Disaster Preparedness Expo in partnership with the City of Mission Viejo. Wonderful event attended by thousands of people every year in conjunction with their Walk Against Drugs. And obviously this year, because of COVID-19 and restrictions on mass gatherings, could not do that. But Supervisor Bartlett, continuing on former Supervisor Bates and now Senator Bates' launch of the Disaster Preparedness Expo, has produced a South County Emergency Preparedness Summit video. It was taped last month, produced at Saddleback College. We're very blessed that they have a wonderful audiovisual department there that helped us produce it. But very informative presentations. Obviously, COVID-19 is big on everybody's mind and will be for some time. There's an update from Dr. Chow, Clayton Chow, our county health officer. Also, Sheriff Barnes is on there and has a fantastic presentation on the county's emergency preparedness efforts. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, during an emergency, it is the sheriff who is in charge of the Emergency Operations Center. So he goes into a lot of detail on that. Donna Boston, who is the director of the Emergency Management Division of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, does a fantastic personal emergency preparedness kits and all the information you need to be prepared personally. And then Caroline Chow, she is the Senior Vice President of Southern California Edison and Edison International. She does a great presentation, very informative presentation on PSPS, power safety, power shutoff, and rotating outages, which we've been experiencing and will probably continue to experience in the next month or so. And then lastly, someone asked a question about SONG, San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station. One of the other presenters on the video is Doug Bowder, who is the Vice President and Chief Nuclear Officer for SONGS. And he does a very timely and up-to-date presentation on the decommissioning of SONGS. So I encourage everyone to go to Supervisor Bartlett's website. They could watch it anytime. SUPBartlett.com, SUPBartlett.com, and help us get the word out. It's very timely information, especially in the next 30 days. In addition, the supervisor, in conjunction with Supervisor Andrew Doe, has established an Office of Suicide Prevention with our Orange County Healthcare Agency, which was approved unanimously by the Board of Supervisors last week. And the work was put into a progress report titled Community Suicide Prevention Initiative, which includes a pilot program to focus on some of the most at-risk communities, such as youth, young adults, and men in their middle years, and older adults. And the goal of the initiative, which will be executed through the new Office of Suicide Prevention, is to create a system of preventative care and recovery by bringing hope, connection, and purpose to those who may be at risk of suicide. Additionally, the supervisor has launched a nutrition gap program. We've been promoting it for a number of weeks now. And the program is aimed at supporting nutritional needs of our most vulnerable populations, including people over 55, individuals with disabilities, regardless of age, and our military veterans, regardless of age. And that's being done in partnership with 211oc.org. If you go to 211oc.org, you'll see all the information there. But all of this information, you can find it every week on our newsletter. If you don't get the supervisor's newsletter, I urge you to sign up. It's again, you can sign up through supbartlett.com, supbartlett.com. One last thing about the election, the Register of Voters has a very informative document titled the OC Social Media Kit, General Election 2020. And that's included in our newsletter too. It's a one-stop shopping document for all things election this year, where the official drop boxes are and everything else you want to know. Go to that document and you'll find it in there. That's all I got.
Thank you. That was really informative. Thank you, Sergio. All right, moving on. Kelly Render, City of Dana Point. Beautiful background, Kelly. So pretty.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I will just also continue on the voting subject matter. We have had a lot of people try to drop off ballots at the community center. Community center is not a ballot drop off. It opens as a voting center on October 30th. So we've been directing people to the Dana Point Library and the fire station on Nagel, which are accepting ballots, but there's definitely people are getting used to the new system of voting this year. Couple of new businesses, Rad Brat's going to be opening soon, Cali Cafe, where the old Taco Surf is, and Station Craft, while still under construction, they have started to brew beer in their building. So we are excited for them. Kind of the hot topics, short-term rentals, that's going to be, still ongoing discussions with the community and the Planning Commission for, several months ahead. So nothing changing on that front rapidly at all. The council's still also discussing ADUs, and staff is those are accessory dwelling units, and staff is looking at some of the items that other cities are building into their ordinances that HCD has either commented on or not commented on, to really try to craft the best ordinance for Dana Point. We have several art projects going on in town. You'll see that some of the utility boxes have been wrapped. We're continuing to wrap utility boxes around town. And then we have placed the John Severson statue. We'll be unwrapping that on Friday, but really postponing any formal ribbon cutting until we kind of get through COVID a bit more. We've tended to have like hundreds of people come to those past ribbon cuttings. So we have every intention of doing it at some point, but we'll be postponing that in the meantime. And we have a mural hopefully coming soon in Doheny Village. That's still, the concept is still being massaged and working with the building owner. And we look forward to that. We have a lot of fun things happening for Halloween. I'll list them off quickly. We have a bunch of decorating contests. We have a pet dress up contest. We're having a movie night in Spooktacular, and we're going to Spooky Treat Trolley on October 30th, where we're going to decorate the trolley, and staff will go from city park to hand out candy. So trying to kind of keep in the spirit of things, even though this year is looking a little bit different. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And then we have Mr. Jeff Bott from the Toll Roads.
Thank you, Vicki. Good morning, everyone. Just some good news to share this morning. We continue to weather the storm successfully from COVID, the toll roads. A few months ago, our finance department did some scenario projections, since there's no end to the pandemic in sight in the near future, and we don't know how much longer it's going to go, and we're all impacted. We did some worst case scenarios, medium and best case scenarios for the traffic projections. Currently, we're exceeding all of those, so we're very happy about that. If you've been on the toll roads, you've seen that most of our signs have been replaced. All the faded purple signs are now new. They're simplified. The term express account is gone. Now it's just fast track or a pay by plate, or if you don't have an account, go on, pay online later. Much more simplified, and it looks a lot better out there. It's been part of a $3 million signage project we've been undertaking the last 3 months. If you've been over to Oso Parkway, you'll see that that project's almost completed, connecting the 241 to the new Los Bertones Parkway. It looks great out there and should be open soon. Thanks, Vicki.
Thanks, Jeff. Awesome. I think that's all we have for today. Again, thank you to everybody for logging on and joining us for the chat with DA Spitzer. Selfish promo for the Dana Point Chamber of Commerce. We've got our virtual turkey trot coming up. It's our 43rd annual. And so we would love for you to register for that. We are firm believers that tradition cannot be canceled, just might look a little bit different this year. So run the race before you stuff your face, but in your own place. So I put the link for turkeytrot.com if you guys wanted to register. Thank you. We're very good at rhyming.
Yes.
Other than that, thanks again to everybody. And if there's ever anything that we can do to assist, please don't hesitate to reach out here to the Dana Point Chamber of Commerce. And remember to shop local. It's always a prime day to shop local in Dana Point. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Vicki. Great job.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye.
week. Bye-bye.